I used to be afraid, actually terrified, of magic mushrooms. My rationale behind this fear was that I had a really scary trip in my teens. Garden gnomes and paintings on the way to the bathroom talking to me and insulting me, that sort of a thing. The reason why I am prefacing episode 3 of the Rachel Z Project with this introduction, or story rather, is because I am now no longer afraid of the magic, period. And as myself and my shaman husband prepare for our next heroic vision quest with now 14 grams of penis envy mushrooms, I wanted to take a step back, have a breath, and tell you the story about how I got into Mushroomland. It has been approximately 1 year since I broke through. The story of how I eventually broke through into Mushroomland actually begins in 2012 when myself and Kevin were still living at Kevin's dad's place. Remember, according to the ancient Mayan calendar, the world ended in 2012. At this time, Kevin had really started to delve into DMT. We also went on a trip to the Mayan pyramids in Mexico, specifically Chichen Itza, which I fondly dubbed as chicken pizza. All joking aside, Chichen Itza was and is known as the city of the water sorcerers. This trip was also before your phone was also your camera, and so those pictures exist somewhere on an old digital camera or a laptop. Somewhere. We will find them. Regardless of the lack of said photo proof, we managed to tap into the natural energy of the grid there. The mother signal of the grid of the earth. I now know that the Mayans were an ancient tribe of Atlantis, but that is a story for a future time. When we returned from that vacation, I went back to my regularly scheduled Matrix life. Correction, regularly scheduled Arcano Matrix life. After all, there is a natural grid, an organic matrix that is not to be confused with the overlay that is laid on top of it. What I mean by that initial comment is that when I went back to competing in fitness and working my way up the corporate world as a digital project manager, that's working within the Arcano matrix. But remember what I said about the organic grid versus the overlay or the Arcano matrix. We are going to return to that topic soon. Kevin, however, when we had returned, had started to really shift in consciousness. My memory here of specific timelines fail me at this time, but I do know that Kevin had started to really work more deeply with the magic of psychedelics, specifically DMT. I was honestly not quite sure what I had thought of the whole thing at the time, only that the concept scared me a little bit. But Kevin had always supported me and never clipped my wings, and so I always made an effort to try to do the same thing, even though I didn't quite understand. This next section of the story is called DMT and Taming Your Shadow Dragon. I will admit some of my shadow stuff here. Due to the general consensus of society thinking of DMT as a drug, actually as all psychedelics as a type of drug, as well as being something more mystical and unexplained, I had some old guilt and religious programming that caused me to demonize the whole thing. Furthermore, this was wrapped up in how religious my father is, being a past Sunday school teacher and attending an all-girls Catholic school run by nuns. I also, however, in spite of all this, had a girlhood belief that I was protected by angels. And I do still believe that, although my NLP and understanding of what angels truly are has been updated. This will all be lessons in the warrior class where you can also figure out what storyline and archetypes in this lifetime you are playing out. Going back to Kevin DMT, I knew in my heart that he was starting to become a shaman, as he was assisting, guiding fellow beings into the magic, but I never interfered. And as the years went on, we would get into sporadic fights over it, because I was feeling like Kevin was no longer interested in the matrix hustle that I myself was still so involved in. I wanted to start a podcast, but I was also still competing and being a digital project manager at the same time. As many of you know, I tend to have about 5 million projects going on at the same time. I attribute this to my Gemini moon. That is not an excuse. That is just a call out. I was simply just panicking that I was losing my husband. In fact, the truth of the matter was that my husband was actually trying to help me find myself again. The main challenge with working with DMT or any psychedelic substance, magical tool, let's call them, is that language can only go so far to describe the absolute mystical and incomprehensible experience that one would have on it. Because what is actually happening? When you are journeying, this is a loaded question. This is why art and poetry and cinema and comic books and stories exist. In telling a story, it is a way of describing truths of the universe without explicitly calling it out. Going forward, what I'm hoping to organize within this emerging psychedelic renaissance is to gather shared intel and start to create new words, new symbols, and ways to describe the experience, and not just the experience, everything. You will get that more later. And this is why myself and Kevin, from a magic mushroom perspective, do not subscribe to the terms of microdose or to have retreats. Both of these terms limit the possibilities of what something so ancient, so majestic, so magnificent and sacred can offer. I'm going off on a tangent, so let me get back to the main storyline. A couple of years passed and my career trajectory as a digital project manager really took off. I worked primarily in the automobile industry with FCA Chrysler, as well as the hospital in diabetes, and in AR, VR, and animation projects for the pharmaceutical industry. At the same time, because I love doing a million things at once, I was still competing in fitness and bikini and training girls for shows. However, I was becoming increasingly disillusioned with what the fitness industry was becoming, as well as that whole mindset adding to and attributing to my already abusive relationship with my body. This next section is about Newt and the goddesses. My first episode of the Rachel Z Project was all about why I said goodbye to competing in fitness. So I will ensure I have a link to that if you are still interested. There were a number of other events that occurred, from marrying the love of my life, Kevin, in 2015, to adopting my fur baby Wolfie, to my baby sister moving to Toronto, that crazy road trip, etc. And eventually, I gathered enough courage to finally ask Kevin to try DMT. I will preface something very important here. You have to be the one to want to approach this experience. You have to hear that call. It cannot be something that is forced upon you. It is very much an energetic thing in approaching. That being said, I have not ever truly broken through completely on DMT. I have only been in the waiting room area, so to speak. But my experience on this DMT trip is relevant because it relates very acutely to now. The ancient Egyptian sky goddess Nut came to me, floating with me over a dreamy celestial grid. There are many stories about Nut, our divine mother goddess, but I will include that in my goddess series because she deserves that attention. Nut told me to kill all your idols. No one is deserving of the pedestal that this reality enforces on you through slippery linguistic programming. No one but you is worthy of worship, of sacrifice, of that attention, of accolades. Within you is the goddess that you seek. We have been served up many false idols in our culture. Beyonce, Lady Gaga, Madonna, Britney Spears, J-Lo, whomever. And I'm not taking away from the talent that these ladies have. I'm only saying that much of the attention that we spend worshiping false idols is energy that is better served in working on your own magical goddess powers. There are goddesses, names long forgotten in the mists of time, and sacred aspects of the divine feminine energy that are ignored and despised because of ignorance and fear. I am prefacing this takeaway from the DMT trip because it directly relates to the first time I broke through on magic mushrooms. The Soma brew that enabled me to break through this reality was a combination of 6 grams of albino penis envy mushrooms and 2 grams of golden teachers. Every magic mushroom has its own personality to it, and apes, albino penis envies, are actually known as being stronger. They also have that vibe of Gandalf from Lord of the Rings to me. Prior to this, myself and Kevin had been working with 6 grams of Arissas and 6 grams of golden teachers. And this provided a magical experience. However, I did not break through. Quick disclaimer here. If you would like to approach a ceremony with us, your first ceremony would likely be around 4 to 5 grams with a more gentle mushroom teacher. It would be specific to your past experiences and needs. The amount that one needs to break through can vary. Okay, so let's get into the story about how I broke through. Set and setting with ceremony. I like to think of mushrooms or psychedelics as the spice in Dune. An ancient living magical artifact our ancestors used for space travel for eternity. And just like a spaceship, navigation is key. Otherwise, you can be taken down some pretty crazy waters. And crazy waters can be just fine, but usually you would want to be prepared for such a journey. One of the warrior runes is an arrow, kind of pointing up, representing aiming for a target. Better to aim for the moon, and if you miss, you'll end up amongst the stars. Compare this to not having a target at all and shooting out into oblivion. At that point, your experience could be anything. And remember, magic, just like astrology, is agnostic. It is you that dictates the flavor. With magic mushies, the set and setting is incredibly important. And to quote the Hermetic law of magic, as above, so below, and so within, so without. Hence, we have tapestries with art around our sacred space. Hours before the ceremony, I will sage and clear the space, as well as bless our soma brew and the journey. We will lay out alchemical arrays and symbols and time the journey astrologically depending on the goal of the journey. I have a Shadowscapes tarot deck that I do a 1 to 3 card pull to guide the experience. If there is a specific question that I have, I will write it down and place it next to the intention candles that are lit. This has been such an interesting experience for me to recall just what happened when I first broke through. I have a unicorn tapestry on the wall, a gift from my younger sister, called The Protector of Realms. Usually on magic mushrooms, at least for me, there tends to be a type of challenge or a lesson to be learned before getting into the psychedelic party, so to speak. This trip was the literal trip for me because I remember screaming at Kevin, "You broke it," in reference to reality itself. I then found myself in this strange, endless loop of feeling like I was late for work or that I was behind on a deadline. It's actually really hard for me to describe here because it was almost like being placed inside of a puzzle. Halo does this thing in their game design of levels where it just seems like a loop, but the key is to pay attention and to figure out what the lesson is in order to move on. At first, I started to panic because I had completely forgotten that I had taken magic mushrooms in that experience. And after taking a breath, this is where Kevin being able to cue helps me. Something came over me, and it's taken me a long time, actually a whole year, to find the right word to describe it. And it's surrender. I accepted that this insane loop was just my reality now, and I didn't give a fuck about the deadlines. And in that moment of release, of acceptance, everything just exploded. In a split second, I felt everyone who had ever lived on the planet Earth. Every hope, every missed opportunity, every heartbreak, every dream, every bit of anger and despair and shame. And then through it all, in spite of the sometimes overwhelming pain, grief, and suffering, there's love. A powerful love that permeates and is eternal. There is a deep strength of the human experience, and we chose to come here to experience everything that is fully possible. We have a birthright bestowed on us from our solar father and our Mother Earth. And we owe it to ourselves and to our brethren, our brothers and sisters on this beautiful planet, to play the game of life at the highest level that we can. What is real is completely dependent on you and your perspective. Well, if he just jumped on the bed because he heard me talk about this. We are the masters of our universe, and that birthright has been taken away from us because of lies. That the experts know more than what you do about your own experiences. That value, true value, comes from monetary value. Such a lie. That you have to play small so that you don't offend or disturb for the fear of punishment. That you have to give up on your dreams. The truth is that you are sovereign. You are free, and you are a creator being. There is so much more here, but I cannot begin to cover it with mere language or even with this video. Hence, my need to create a new musical called Atlantis Electric Circus and finish my graphic novel that began when I was 14, The Dragon Warriors, because art is how we communicate the ineffable. And after the initial surrender, the whole whoa moment, the fireworks and ego death and full-on transformation, I remember looking at Kevin and saying, I get it. I really get it. All those years from when Kevin broke through, I finally got it. We cried together for a very long time. It's really something when someone really sees you for who you truly are. He waited for me. He waited for me, patiently waiting for me to break through so that I could get it. What our mission is here. And to find the others like us. So, on the other side of that breakthrough was the dreamland of my childhood. A fairyland of magic and space to dance, a beautiful Mushroomland. The journey takes approximately 8 hours or so that huge firework explosion is really only a small part of the whole story, but I think the most important one here to leave you as I close this episode. It has been about 1 year since I broke through, and that incredible transformative experience. And so now I am finally ready to do what I came here into this lifetime to do. And that is to tell stories, because those who tell the stories rule the world, and we are creator beings. And in a world where we're seeing so much destruction and so much pain, the opposite must also be true. So I hope you enjoyed this episode 3 of the Rachel Z Project. Welcome to Mushroomland. I am hoping to be posting more podcasts on a regular basis, and we'll be having guests about not just Mushroomland, but topics relating to neuro-linguistic programming, which is NLP, astrology, as well as movement technology and health. So, looking forward to future content and looking forward to what you think about Mushroomland. Until next time, Starseeds.